welcome to Billy's Books. Guess what? I'm going to do another Star Wars novel. This one is Ronin, which turns out to be a Visions novel. I assume that matches it up with the new Visions miniseries on Disney Plus, which I believe episode 1 is this. It looks like the cover. Anyway, it's funny to mention that it looks like the cover. When I ordered this from the library, I was convinced that it was a graphic novel. I was wrong. It's got words. Lots and lots of words. Yeah, how about that? So I was actually pleased because I like regular novels more than graphic novels. Anyway, so Ronin. A Ronin is a wanderer or a drifter. That would be the case of this guy. You'll notice he has a red saber, which is usually related with a Sith warrior. This book is filled with ambiguities and unexplained things. So, for example, Ronin is Wanderer. So this is the Ronin. We don't know his name. There are other characters in this book whose names we don't know. And that is one. There's even a pronoun. There's a guy who they nicknamed Fox for lack of a better reason. But he's also, and he has they, them pronouns instead of the usual name or him or her, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so a lot of people are really ambiguous. One of the great ambiguities of this story is where in the timeline does it happen? They're pretty vague about that. They talk about the Empire, but I think it's a different empire. I think this is like not only in the story of Star Wars, but in this book in general. It generally has the vibe of feudal ancient Japan. So one of the things we learn is that the Jedi kind of work for the Empire, and the Jedi aren't. There's not one centralized Jedi, but Jedi tend to work for their feudal lords, and the Empire is an amalgamation of feudal lords, which makes me think it's ancient and way before all the Star Wars we usually know. Or it could be way after. Or it could be, since they're out in the Outer Rim, it could just be that stuff is different out there. It's ambiguous. This book is all about ambiguity. They're on a quest for something, but we don't know what. Some sort of Sith object. He's pursued by another Sith, who we are calling Kuru. I think she's like the one person whose name we know. And she's an ex-Sith, so it's bad ex-Sith versus good ex-Sith? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing though, because of the general writing has the vibe of ancient Japan. It's a really different kind of Star Wars novel, and for that reason I like it, because it has a very different vibe. You really feel like you're in ancient Japan. They talk about sitting in the lotus position. They talk about bamboo. They talk about sitting in sheets. They have tea houses and rice and all this stuff. The only difference is there's lightsabers and spaceships, but that's it. Otherwise, it really feels like ancient Japan, and that's a really good thing. It shows that the galaxy is bigger than just United States and the United Kingdom. Turns out that's true. Anyway, I can look at some of my notes here. Ronin hears. Oh, so one of the other things that the Ronin hears in his head is some voice who's always mocking him, and he doesn't really trust it, but he knows to trust it some. And one of the other nameless characters also hears it, and it takes them a while to figure that out. You notice I'm not telling you much about the plot? Yes, that is true too. These wanderers and these ex-Sith have all sorts of things, and they go various places, but it's all very ambiguous. Oh, one thing I find really interesting is just how differently the Force is perceived in this book. You know, when we hear about Anakin anticipating things by a couple seconds, or, all these different Jedi that we're familiar with in our era, and they talk about, anticipating things and, sort of feeling it and just being around. All that's very different. In this book, the people, they sort of sense the Force as, well, one example, a lot of things are black and white. I'm not sure it's dark and light. That's ambiguous too. One of these Force sensitive characters sees, in one instance, a black current spiked with white flare. And the different characters who have the Force sensitivity or utilize it, they see each other and they manifest their force in different ways with different combinations of black, whites, current and flare and things like that. And I find that very interesting. Of course, it makes me think of, Japanese paintings, stuff like that. But I may be projecting. I am not all that knowledgeable in that culture. Something that some Westerners are trying to learn from the Eastern culture is mindfulness. He was woken a mere few hours later. A bit of practice, said the traveler, aka Fox, as they led him down to the cargo hold in the belly of the Crow, that's a ship. If we don't clean that rust off you, you're going to be gored by a demon before you ever get us to Raizu. Now the Ronin stood in a cleared section of the long hold. Cargo containers had been shoved about to make rudimentary obstacles, or ranged in the loading zone just outside. Though fed and slept, the Ronin itched with an odd loneliness. B5 had passed them on the way, and chosen to say little more than a cursory greeting before returning to assist the pilot's debate with the Navicomputer. The voice had not spoken at all. Perhaps this was why he relished the opportunity to face his opponent. This particular section of the book is written from Ronin's perspective, and he's, about to do something, but you see he's got these feelings, and then not everybody is that insightful. That's what I mean by mindfulness. That's all. The Fox character, aka Traveler, we don't even know what their deal is, whether they are ex-Sith, ex-Jedi, or just some other weird thing. They're so extra hard to tell. Anyway, there's this quote that I think could apply to any of them, but it of course applies to the Ronin. I am my own blood, and these are my own people. Never again do I serve the Jedi. Never again do I yield to their lords. Now remember, in this context, the Jedi serve lords the way samurai used to serve their lords. I enjoy this book very much. As far as Star Wars books, the fact that it's actually got a whole different vibe and culture to it, I find very interesting and a nice change of pace. There's still a lot of characters, but not so many that you can't keep track, and the wordplay I find much more interesting than some of the other books. So I'm going to have to say, if you want something a little different, but still Star Wars, I'm really enjoying this book. If you can't do, review.